For thousands of years, the stars had been silent. Humans had looked up at the night sky, imagining distant worlds and other civilizations, but they never expected the universe to speak back in a way that would change everything. Deep in space, orbiting stars long forgotten by anyone alive, a signal had been traveling for tens of thousands of years. It was not just any signal. It was old, ancient beyond imagination, a message that had been lost for 80,000 years, waiting patiently for someone to find it. And then, one day, it reached Earth. At first, no one understood what it was. Astronomers noticed something strange on their instruments. Signals in space were normal. Of course, pulsars, radio waves, cosmic noise, but this was different. It was structured, deliberate, precise. It wasn't random. And it was coming from a place that no one had considered important. Some scientists assumed it was interference from some human-made satellite or equipment malfunction. But as they ran more tests, the patterns repeated, like a message trying to announce itself to anyone who could understand. Across the world, observatories and research centers began buzzing with excitement and confusion. Teams of experts were called in to analyze the data. They worked around the clock, combing through the waves, trying to decode the message. Every civilization in the galaxy had long believed that the original senders of this signal were lost to history. Stories of this vanished civilization had become myths, legends passed down through fragmented galactic records. Entire species had searched for traces of their technology, their messages, or even their ruins, but nothing had been found until now. And the signal wasn't just a trace. It was alive, almost as if the universe itself had held its breath for 80,000 years, and now was finally ready to exhale. In the beginning, many of the alien species that monitored the galaxy ignored the signal. They didn't see it as a threat, and they didn't see it as anything urgent. Perhaps they thought it was simply a relic, a dead voice trying to speak across the void. But Earth, small and seemingly insignificant to the broader galactic community, heard it clearly. Human scientists noticed patterns that others overlooked. Where alien scholars saw noise, humans detected meaning. Where other species struggled to make sense of the language, humans began to piece together fragments. What amazed them the most was how familiar it felt. The code, the symbols, even the rhythm of the message. It resonated with something deep in human cognition. It was almost as if, somewhere in their distant past, humanity had known this language before and had long forgotten it. The scientists on Earth worked tirelessly, often losing sleep, driven by a mix of curiosity and awe. It was not just about discovery anymore. It was personal. This was a message that had chosen to find them, and they were determined to answer it. Meanwhile, beyond Earth, the galaxy started to stir. Other species began noticing the sudden flurry of human activity. Messages were being sent out, networks activated, and unusual preparations were quietly taking place. Some began to wonder why humans were so quick to respond to a signal that had puzzled the galaxy for millennia. The Council of Species, the body that oversaw interstellar communication and relations, started discussing Earth in urgent terms. Reports came in. Humans have accessed the signal. They are analyzing it faster than expected. There were whispers of excitement, curiosity, and even fear. Back on Earth, as the teams worked to decode the signal, small patterns began to emerge. At first, they were only fragments, bits of information that seemed unrelated. But slowly, a story unfolded. The message spoke of a civilization that had once spanned multiple star systems, a civilization that had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. There were warnings embedded within the data, instructions, coordinates, and even hints about dangers that no living species had ever faced. The signal was not just a message from the past. It was a bridge, connecting humanity to a history they never knew they belonged to. The scientists found themselves grappling with questions they had never expected to face. Who sent this message? Why had it waited so long to be heard? And most importantly, why had it chosen humans as the ones to understand it? Night after night, they pored over the data, translating, decoding, cross-referencing with every record available on Earth and in the galactic archives they could access. As the patterns came into focus, an incredible realization dawned on. This was more than a simple alert or a fragment of history. It was a summons, a call across time, reaching out specifically to humanity. The human teams were careful, but word began to leak. Rumors spread in scientific communities, then to governments, and eventually through controlled media channels. There was skepticism, of course. How could anyone trust a signal from 80,000 years ago? How could a civilization so ancient be relevant to today? But the evidence was too clear to ignore. The signal contained technical information, star maps, and instructions that pointed directly to Earth's position in the galaxy. It was as if the long-lost civilization knew that one day humans would be ready to respond. On Earth, excitement turned into action. Laboratories and space programs accelerated their work. Unmanned probes were prepared to trace the signal back to its source. Scientists experimented with simulations to predict what might be waiting at the coordinates provided in the message. While most of the galaxy debated, doubted, and delayed, humans acted. Their curiosity, their willingness to explore the unknown, set them apart. And quietly, without making any announcements to the wider universe, Earth began to prepare for something far bigger than anyone could imagine. The signal itself remained mysterious. It was not simply a series of instructions or warnings. It was alive in its own way, carrying information that adapted to the human's understanding. As scientists uncovered more layers, it became clear that this was not just a message for knowledge, but a message designed to guide, to teach, and to prepare. It contained lessons about survival, strategy, and understanding the universe in ways humans had never learned. For the first time, humanity realized that their place in the galaxy might not be random. They were small, but they were important. They had been chosen, or at least noticed, by a civilization that had existed before them, a civilization that had seen dangers far beyond human imagination. And now, after 80,000 years, that civilization's voice had finally reached them. By the end of the first year since the signal was detected, Earth had transformed. Space agencies, research centers, and even independent thinkers had united under a common purpose. The world had started to feel smaller and larger at the same time, the smallness of a planet in a vast universe, and the largeness of humans finally stepping onto a stage that had been set for them long ago. Even ordinary people began to notice. The sky seemed different somehow, as if the stars themselves were watching, waiting for humanity to respond. As the decoding progressed, a sense of urgency and wonder grew. The signal suggested not just knowledge, but responsibility. It was a message lost in time, forgotten by all, now found, and it demanded attention. Humans did not know exactly what they would find when they followed the signal's path. But they understood this. The universe was far bigger and more mysterious than anyone had imagined. And the galaxy had been waiting for them. And for the first time in history, Earth was no longer just a small, quiet planet orbiting an ordinary star. It was a planet that had been chosen, a planet whose inhabitants were waking to a destiny that stretched across the stars. Humanity was listening, understanding, and preparing to respond. And whatever lay ahead, the first step had been taken. The signal had been heard. Humanity had answered. As the signal from the distant stars continued to pour in, humanity began to realize that what they were dealing with was far beyond anything they had ever faced before. Scientists had spent months studying the patterns, the codes, and the strange sequences embedded in the signal, and slowly, layer by layer, they started to uncover its meaning. At first, it seemed impossible. How could a message that had traveled for 80,000 years still be understandable? How could it speak directly to humans when countless other civilizations had tried and failed to decode it for centuries? It was not just a matter of understanding the words or the symbols. The message contained knowledge about the universe, about civilizations long gone, and about dangers that no one alive had ever seen. The signal was like a puzzle, carefully designed to test intelligence, patience, and intuition. And humans, with their relentless curiosity and determination, were slowly piecing it together. But the moment of breakthrough came unexpectedly. One evening, after long hours of research, a team noticed a pattern that no one had seen before. It was subtle, almost hidden within the noise of the signal, but it was unmistakable once recognized. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't a simple message begging for help. It was a summons. The long-lost civilization that had sent this signal, its name lost in time, had left instructions for someone to find and understand it. And that someone was humanity. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. The message spoke of a great responsibility, one that humans had never imagined they could be a part of. It hinted at threats that had wiped out civilizations before, at forces so powerful that entire star systems had been destroyed. And it suggested that humans were not merely observers in the galaxy, but potential guardians, chosen to respond when the time came. As this understanding spread among the scientific community, excitement turned into careful planning. Governments and space agencies collaborated in secret. They built new teams, designed experiments, and prepared missions to investigate the coordinates embedded in the signal. Unlike other civilizations in the galaxy, which debated endlessly and hesitated for fear of the unknown, humanity acted. There was a sense of urgency that could not be ignored. The signal was not just a message from the past. It was a warning about the future. Despite the secrecy, rumors began to leak. Other species, monitoring the galaxy, noticed unusual activity from Earth. Messages were being sent. Research centers were working at an unprecedented pace. And strange patterns of communication were being observed. The Council of Species, the interstellar body that governed interplanetary relations, grew curious and suspicious. They sent envoys, watchers, and probes to study Earth's activities, but humans were careful. They shared almost nothing. They did not want to reveal the full scope of their understanding until they were ready. Inside Earth's labs, the work continued. Teams of scientists, engineers, and historians worked together in ways that had never been seen before. They cross-referenced the information from the signal with Earth's own records, searching for clues that could help them make sense of the ancient message. Every discovery brought more questions. Who had sent this signal? Why had it chosen Earth? And what exactly did the message mean by the dangers it described? One of the most surprising aspects of the signal was how much it seemed to know about humans. The patterns in the message aligned with human ways of thinking, with the way humans solved problems and understood the world. It was as if the long-lost civilization had anticipated that humans would one day rise to the challenge. The feeling was both humbling and empowering. For the first time, humans realized that they were not alone in their importance. Somewhere, in a time long before recorded history, a civilization had seen potential in humanity and had left a path for them to follow. As weeks turned into months, humanity's understanding deepened. The signal contained layers of knowledge that seemed impossible to grasp all at once. It spoke of star maps, advanced energy sources, and strategies for survival against unknown cosmic threats. It described technologies that could only be dreamed of, blueprints for machines and tools that could travel vast distances or harness energy in ways humans had not yet achieved. Every discovery brought a sense of wonder, but also a growing awareness of the responsibility that came with it. Humans began to realize that the galaxy had been watching them in ways they had not understood. For centuries, other civilizations had monitored Earth, dismissing it as insignificant, while humans quietly developed, struggled, and learned. And now, suddenly, humans had something that others could not understand, a connection to an ancient civilization that gave them knowledge and purpose. This understanding created a new sense of confidence. Humans were no longer just a small planet orbiting an ordinary star. They were becoming a part of a much larger story. The work of decoding the message was not without challenges. The signal contained warnings as well as instructions. It spoke of dangers that could destroy entire systems, forces that could obliterate life without warning. Humans had to balance their excitement with caution. Every experiment, every test, every attempt to understand the message had to be approached carefully. Mistakes could be costly, not just for Earth, but potentially for the galaxy itself. Despite the risks, humans pressed forward. They tested theories, built prototypes, and ran simulations. They discovered that the signal was more than just data. It was guidance. It taught them ways to think about problems differently, to see patterns where others saw chaos, to anticipate outcomes that seemed impossible. It was as if the long-lost civilization had left not just instructions, but a way of thinking, a way of seeing the universe that humans could adopt. As this understanding grew, the world began to change quietly. Space programs expanded. Universities created new departments dedicated to studying the message, and private research labs joined in. Humans were united by a common purpose, something that transcended borders and politics. The signal had created a shared mission, a goal that everyone could understand and rally around. For the first time, humanity felt a sense of unity that was rare in its history. Meanwhile, the galaxy continued to watch. Other species noticed the rapid progress on Earth, and some grew anxious. Why were humans advancing so quickly? What did they know that others did not? Envoys from distant civilizations tried to communicate, offering assistance, but humans politely declined. They were cautious, knowing that revealing too much too soon could be dangerous. The signal had come to them first, and it was their responsibility to follow its instructions carefully. As months passed, the human understanding of the signal became more complete. They realized that it was not simply a message from the past, it was a call to action. The civilization that had sent it had faced challenges that humans could barely imagine, and it had left this message to guide a species it believed could rise to meet the same challenges. Humans were being asked to take a role in a story that began long before their time, and that would continue long after. The feeling among those who studied the message was a mixture of awe, fear, and determination. Humans were learning that they were not just observers in the universe, they were participants. They were being entrusted with knowledge that could save or destroy, depending on how it was used. And for the first time, humanity understood that their choices mattered on a galactic scale. By the end of this second phase of discovery, humanity had done something remarkable. They had taken a message lost for 80,000 years and made it their own. They had decoded its meaning, understood its warnings, and begun to act on its instructions. The signal had not just informed them, it had transformed them. Humans were no longer just a curious species on a small planet. They were becoming a force capable of shaping the future. A species ready to respond to challenges that the galaxy had never seen before. And as the first year of this incredible journey came to a close, humanity faced a new reality. They were no longer just listening. They were responding. The message had awakened something within them, a sense of purpose that could not be ignored. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, but humans had discovered that they were ready to face them. They had understood the call of the signal, and in doing so, they had begun a journey that would take them beyond the limits of their world and into the heart of the galaxy itself. As humanity continued to decode the ancient signal, a new challenge arose. The rest of the galaxy had begun to notice the activity on Earth. For centuries, alien civilizations had watched the stars, monitoring signals, searching for signs of life. and studying the small, quiet planet they had long considered insignificant. Most had assumed humans were too primitive to understand the complexities of interstellar messages, or to play any meaningful role in the larger galaxy. They were wrong. The first sign of external attention came subtly. Strange ships appeared near the edges of the solar system, just outside of Earth's immediate observation range. They did not communicate at first, only watched. The crews were composed of beings who had long held positions in the Galactic Council, species that were highly intelligent and cautious. They observed quietly, sending small probes to gather data. Messages were exchanged in code, diplomatic signals that humans intercepted only accidentally. For the first time, humans realized that they were no longer alone in their discoveries. The Council of Species decided to intervene formally. Envoys arrived in orbit around Earth, in massive, silent ships that blocked sunlight from reaching the planet in patches. Their technology was far beyond anything humans had yet seen. Ships shaped in impossible geometries, shimmering shields that bent light, and sensors that could read minute signals from the planet's surface. The envoys requested meetings, not to threaten, but to demand answers. They wanted to know everything humans had learned from the signal. Who had decoded it? What information had been gathered? What actions had Earth taken? The Council representatives made it clear that the message was not meant for one species alone. It belonged to the galaxy. The other civilizations had struggled for centuries, attempting to interpret the signal, and now they demanded that humans share what they had discovered. Earth's leaders were faced with a difficult choice. Revealing the full scope of their discoveries could unite the galaxy, or it could put humanity at risk. No one knew exactly how the Council would react if they felt threatened or if humans refused to comply. For the first time in history, humans had to navigate a situation where their survival might depend not only on understanding a mysterious signal, but also on careful diplomacy with civilizations far stronger than their own. Inside the orbiting laboratories and command centers, scientists and strategists worked together to decide on the best course of action. They agreed unanimously. Humanity would not hand over the information. The signal had chosen them, humans believed, and it was not just a matter of knowledge. It was a matter of responsibility. They had been entrusted with something the rest of the galaxy could not yet understand, and they intended to honor that trust. The envoys were patient at first, offering guidance, asking questions, and observing human activity. But their patience was not endless. Over time, subtle threats began to appear. Ships shifted positions aggressively, sensors scanned deeper, and cryptic messages were sent warning that withholding information could have consequences. It was clear that some members of the Council viewed humans as reckless, naive, or even dangerous. Despite the pressure, humans did not panic. Instead, they turned their attention inward. Teams studied every fragment of the signal with renewed intensity, searching for answers that could help them navigate this complex situation. The signal contained more than coordinates and warnings. It contained instructions, technologies, and strategies. Slowly, the humans realized that the message had prepared them for moments like this, for a time when other civilizations might not understand or accept their role. One breakthrough changed everything. While analyzing the deepest layers of the signal, researchers discovered references to an ancient artifact hidden on Earth itself. The artifact had remained undisturbed for tens of thousands of years, buried beneath layers of ice and rock, and the signal had activated it remotely. This was not a simple object, it was a memory vault, a repository of knowledge left by a civilization that had vanished long ago. The artifact contained histories, technologies, and warnings about dangers that had already shaped the galaxy in ways humans had never imagined. It revealed the existence of a species that had once ruled vast portions of space and had seeded multiple worlds with life. The signal had been their attempt to preserve knowledge, to reach a species that could rise to face a future threat. Humans were discovering that they were not just recipients of information, they were inheritors of a legacy. With the artifact uncovered, humans gained a sense of confidence. They were no longer merely responding to a signal. They were beginning to understand their purpose. But this understanding also brought new challenges. The Council's envoys were aware that humans had discovered something extraordinary. Their questions became more insistent, their presence more imposing. The situation was tense. Any misstep could escalate into conflict, and humans knew that they were vastly outnumbered and technologically outclassed in some respects. To protect their discoveries, humans developed a careful strategy. They communicated with the Council selectively, sharing only minor details while keeping the core of their knowledge secret. They framed it as preliminary research, emphasizing that more study was needed before conclusions could be drawn. This approach allowed them to buy time, giving human scientists and engineers a chance to fully understand the artifact and the information it contained. Meanwhile, the discovery of the artifact transformed life on Earth. Scientists from every discipline collaborated in ways that had never occurred before. Engineers worked with linguists, physicists partnered with historians, and explorers coordinated with programmers. For the first time, humanity was united by a mission that transcended politics, borders, and individual ambitions. The signal had created a shared purpose, and people around the world began to feel connected to something far greater than themselves. The alien envoys, observing from orbit, could sense the change in human behavior. The unity, focus, and rapid progress were unusual. Most species in the galaxy had grown complacent over millennia, relying on tradition and slow bureaucratic systems. Humans were different. Their resourcefulness, adaptability, and determination allowed them to move quickly, to test new ideas, and to find solutions that others might have overlooked. Tensions between Earth and the Council continued, but humans were not intimidated. They had realized that their role in the galaxy was unique. While the other civilizations debated endlessly and hesitated, humans were already taking action. They were learning from the signal, preparing for challenges, and discovering technologies that could one day allow them to stand as equals, or even protectors among the stars. As the months passed, more details of the signal became clear. It spoke of cosmic events, threats that could destroy entire star systems, and forces that had already shaped the galaxy in catastrophic ways. It also contained instructions on how to understand these dangers, how to detect them, and perhaps most importantly, how to prepare for them. The artifact and the signal together provided a roadmap, guiding humans through knowledge that no living species had yet mastered. The more humans learned, the more they realized how little the rest of the galaxy understood. The Council envoys could observe their progress, but they could not replicate it. The signal had chosen humans for reasons that were still mysterious, but it was clear that the decision was deliberate. Humans were rising to a level of understanding that could challenge centuries of assumptions about their place in the galaxy. Even as humanity advanced, the situation remained delicate. The Council's representatives continued to monitor, their presence a constant reminder that humans were being watched. But humans had learned to navigate this tension. They communicated carefully, acted strategically, and kept their most important discoveries protected. They were aware that they were part of a larger game, one that involved the fate of countless civilizations and the survival of knowledge that had endured for 80,000 years. By the end of this period, humanity had achieved something remarkable. They had decoded the signal, uncovered a hidden artifact, and begun to understand their place in a story that began long before them. They had faced the scrutiny of the galaxy's most powerful species and had held their ground. And most importantly, they had begun to respond not with aggression, but with intelligence, patience, and determination. For the first time, Humans realized that their actions could have consequences far beyond their own planet. The galaxy was watching, and history had entrusted them with knowledge and responsibility that could shape the future. The signal was no longer just a message from the past. It was a challenge, a guide, and a call to action. And humanity, for all its flaws and limitations, was beginning to rise to meet it. The stage was set for what would come next. Humans had taken the first steps, navigated the scrutiny of the galaxy, and begun to prepare for challenges that no one else could fully understand. The artifact had revealed the past, the signal had provided guidance, and humans were now ready to confront the unknown. The galaxy might have doubted them, dismissed them, or even feared them, but humanity had discovered something far more powerful than technology or strength. They had discovered purpose, and with purpose came action. The next steps would not be easy, and the challenges would grow. But humans had learned. As humanity continued to study the artifact, the pieces of a much larger puzzle slowly began to fall into place. The artifact was not just a repository of knowledge, it was a window into the past, a key to understanding a civilization that had vanished tens of thousands of years ago. For the first time, humans began to see themselves not merely as observers of the universe, but as part of a story that had been written long before they existed. Inside the deep underground laboratories, where the artifact had been carefully transported, teams of scientists and engineers worked around the clock. They had learned to read the intricate codes within the device, translating messages that contained histories, star maps, and technologies far beyond human understanding. Every discovery was a revelation. The artifact told stories of worlds that had been destroyed by unknown forces, of civilizations that had risen and fallen, and of beings who had once ruled the galaxy with wisdom and strength. Among the most astonishing revelations was the existence of a civilization called the Orin. They were ancient beyond measure, seeding planets with life, observing the evolution of species, and preparing for threats that spanned entire galaxies. The Orin had disappeared thousands of years ago, leaving only fragments of their legacy scattered across the stars. And now, through this artifact, they were speaking directly to humans. The artifact revealed that the Orin had seen potential in humanity, long before humans had become aware of the wider universe. It explained that humans had been carefully guided, subtly influenced over millennia, so that they would develop the intelligence, curiosity, and adaptability needed to respond to challenges the galaxy could not face alone. Humans were not chosen randomly. They were heirs to a responsibility that had been waiting for them for tens of thousands of years. As this realization sank in, humans felt a mix of awe and fear. They were no longer just a species living on a small, quiet planet. They were now aware of a cosmic legacy, a history of civilizations rising and falling, and a responsibility to protect not just Earth, but potentially entire star systems. The weight of this knowledge was enormous, but it also gave humanity purpose, a sense of unity and determination that had never existed before on such a scale. The artifact contained more than history. It also contained warnings. The Orin had faced a threat so powerful that entire star systems had been consumed. They had recorded the methods to detect, understand, and counter this danger, but their civilization had ultimately been destroyed. Now, they were entrusting humanity with the tools to survive where they had failed. Humans studied the instructions carefully, running simulations and building prototypes to understand how these ancient technologies could be applied. The first breakthrough came in understanding energy. The Orin had left detailed diagrams and formulas for harnessing energy in ways that humans had never imagined. Using this knowledge, engineers designed power systems that could fuel spacecraft capable of traveling vast distances in relatively short time. Systems that could generate shields strong enough to protect entire fleets, and weapons that could manipulate energy in precise ways to counter cosmic threats. The excitement was palpable, but so was the awareness of the stakes. This was not science fiction. These technologies were real, and they were meant to be used for survival. At the same time, historians and linguists worked to decode the cultural and philosophical teachings of the Orin. These were just as important as the technological blueprints. The Orin had left guidance on ethics, strategy, and decision-making for civilizations facing existential threats. Humans began to learn not only how to fight or defend, but also how to think strategically on a scale they had never considered. Every lesson was relevant to survival, cooperation, and understanding the galaxy as a whole. Outside of the laboratories, the rest of the world was slowly learning about the discoveries. Governments, scientific organizations, and international agencies were involved in discussions, planning, and preparations. The awareness that humanity held a unique position in the galaxy changed priorities, alliances, and even public consciousness. People began to look at the stars not just with curiosity, but with a sense of responsibility. Humanity was no longer isolated. It had a role that required careful planning, courage, and collective effort. Meanwhile, the Council envoys continued to observe from orbit. They were aware of the artifact and suspected its significance, but they could not yet understand the depth of what humanity had uncovered. Their attempts at influence continued, but humans were careful. They shared only enough to keep the aliens engaged without revealing the full scope of their discoveries. The balance between transparency and secrecy became a crucial strategy. Humans had learned that patience, planning, and selective disclosure were as important as technology and knowledge. As humans dug deeper into the artifact, they discovered references to specific locations across the galaxy, worlds where the Orin had once intervened or left critical knowledge. Some of these places were believed to be lost, their coordinates erased from memory to protect the galaxy from the very threat that had destroyed the Orin. Humans realized that exploring these worlds could provide additional tools, guidance, and understanding. It was both an opportunity and a risk. The journeys would take them far from Earth, into areas that were largely unknown, and possibly dangerous. The revelation of the Orin's legacy also transformed human society. People began to feel a shared sense of purpose. Scientists, engineers, military planners, and ordinary citizens realized that their efforts could make a difference, not only for Earth, but for life across the galaxy. This unity created innovations and collaborations previously unimaginable. Universities created new programs, laboratories opened worldwide, and engineers shared designs that pushed humanity forward at a pace previously thought impossible. The artifact had sparked a revolution, not in politics or economics, but in knowledge, vision, and collective determination. As humanity's understanding of the Orin grew, so did their awareness of the threat described in the signal. The ancient messages spoke of a cosmic force, a devourer of worlds that had wiped out entire civilizations. While it had been dormant for tens of thousands of years, the signs suggested that it was beginning to stir again. Humanity realized that time was limited. Preparation was not a choice, it was a necessity. The knowledge from the artifact, combined with human ingenuity, would determine whether Earth and its allies could survive. Scientists and strategists worked together to interpret the threat and plan responses. Simulations were run, prototypes were tested, and strategies were debated. Every detail mattered. Humans studied energy manipulation, defensive systems, and navigation techniques on a galactic scale. They learned from the Orin's successes and failures, building a foundation that combined ancient wisdom with modern innovation. It was a race against time, but humanity was rising to the challenge. The more humans understood the artifact, the more they realized that they were no longer simply responding to a signal. They were being entrusted with the future of the galaxy. The weight of responsibility was immense, but it also brought focus, determination, and a sense of destiny. Humanity began to see themselves not just as inhabitants of Earth, but as participants in a cosmic story that spanned tens of thousands of years. By the end of this phase of discovery, humans had accomplished something extraordinary. They had unlocked the secrets of the Orin, understood their legacy, and begun to prepare for a threat that had remained dormant for millennia. They were no longer merely reacting. They were planning, strategizing, and building a future. And while the council envoys continued to watch and question, humans had learned to navigate their oversight with wisdom, patience, and a clear sense of purpose. The stage was set. Humanity had uncovered a history lost to the galaxy, gained technologies and knowledge far beyond anything they had imagined, and begun to prepare for a threat that had destroyed civilizations before. The artifact had awakened not just knowledge, but a sense of responsibility and unity among humans. They were no longer a small, quiet planet. They were a force rising, ready to face the challenges that awaited beyond the stars. The next steps would take humanity even further. Exploration, preparation, and understanding would continue. But one thing was certain. Humans had taken their place in a story written long before their time. A story that demanded courage, intelligence, and determination. And as they continued to uncover the secrets of the Orin, humanity began to understand the incredible truth. They were not just listening to the galaxy. They were being called to act on its behalf. As humans continued to study the artifact and the messages from the Orin, a new urgency began to grip their efforts. The signs of an approaching threat, the cosmic devourer described in the ancient signal, were becoming impossible to ignore. Energy fluctuations were detected in distant star systems, and strange gravitational waves hinted that massive forces were moving in the far reaches of the galaxy. While these phenomena were far beyond Earth's direct observation, the patterns matched exactly what the Orin had predicted. Humanity now understood that the time for preparation had become critical. The first step was organization. Governments, scientists, and engineers came together as never before, creating global task forces dedicated to studying the threat and building the technologies necessary to respond. Unlike any other challenge humanity had faced, this one required unity on a scale that transcended politics, borders, and personal ambitions. Every resource, every mind, and every skill mattered. Ordinary people also contributed, from mathematicians and engineers to programmers and logisticians, all working with a shared purpose: the survival of Earth and, potentially, the galaxy. Using the artifact's instructions, engineers began designing new spacecraft and energy systems that could withstand extreme conditions. Ships capable of traveling faster than light, shielding against devastating energy waves, and delivering powerful countermeasures were all prototyped. Scientists studied the physics described by the Orin, sometimes questioning whether human understanding was sufficient to handle such advanced concepts. Yet slowly, patiently, they adapted the designs to Earth's capabilities, finding ways to combine ancient knowledge with modern ingenuity. While humans focused on technology, historians and strategists worked to understand the enemy. The Orin had left records describing the Maw Tide, the cosmic devourer, and its methods of attack. Entire civilizations had been wiped out by this force, and the surviving records showed a pattern of destruction that was frighteningly precise. Humans realized that they could not simply rely on force. They had to anticipate the Maw Tide's moves, predict its behavior, and act decisively before it reached populated star systems. Diplomacy also became critical. Though humanity had chosen to keep the most important discoveries secret from the Council, they had to maintain contact to prevent misunderstandings that could escalate into conflict. Messages were crafted carefully, showing readiness to cooperate, while subtly keeping the artifact's secrets protected. It was a delicate balance. Humans needed allies, without revealing the full scope of their knowledge, or revealing the vulnerabilities of their own civilization. Every word, every gesture, and every signal was calculated to ensure safety while preparing for the coming storm. The preparation extended beyond Earth. Human expeditions were sent to planets and moons within the solar system, testing the new technologies, conducting simulations, and practicing maneuvers that might one day be used in battle. Space stations were reinforced, energy grids optimized, and fleets of unmanned probes sent to observe distant star systems for signs of the Mall tide. Every day brought new discoveries, new challenges, and new opportunities to learn. Humanity was no longer passive. They were acting, preparing, and building confidence in their abilities. As the fleet grew, the human teams realized the importance of training not just the machines, but the people who would operate them. Pilots, engineers, scientists, and strategists underwent rigorous preparation, learning to handle stress, make critical decisions, and coordinate under pressure. The Awakens messages emphasized that intelligence, adaptability, and courage were as important as raw technology. Humans embraced this lesson, cultivating leadership, teamwork, and resilience on a scale never seen before. Meanwhile, subtle signs appeared across the galaxy that the Mall tide was awakening. Minor star systems experienced unusual energy surges. Satellites and probes in distant regions began reporting patterns that were consistent with the Devourer's movements. Alien civilizations, many of which had ignored warnings for centuries, began to feel unease, though few fully understood the nature of the threat. The Council, which had long debated and hesitated in the face of uncertainty, now sensed the urgency. Yet it was humanity that had the understanding, the guidance, and the preparation that others lacked. Humanity's confidence grew, but so did their caution. The stakes were higher than ever. They knew that miscalculations could lead to disaster, not just for Earth, but for entire systems of stars. Every action was carefully measured, and contingency plans were created for scenarios that seemed impossible. Scientists debated endlessly. Strategists ran simulations that spanned decades and seconds, and engineers tested designs under extreme conditions. Humanity had become a civilization in overdrive, learning at a pace no other species could match. Driven by the urgency of the coming threat. At the same time, humans realized that the preparation was as much mental as it was physical. They studied historical responses to crises, analyzed patterns of decision-making, and cultivated resilience on a societal level. Propaganda and fear were carefully managed, ensuring that people remained motivated and focused rather than panicked. The Awakens messages emphasized that survival depended not just on technology, but on unity, moral clarity, and the willingness to act decisively when required. Humans embraced this wisdom, shaping their global society to meet the demands of an unprecedented challenge. Through months of preparation, humanity began to see the fruits of their labor. Prototype ships moved flawlessly through test courses. Energy systems exceeded expectations, capable of generating massive amounts of power while remaining stable. Defense mechanisms functioned as designed, capable of shielding entire fleets or delivering precise strikes against devastating threats. Human coordination improved with each exercise, and confidence in their ability to face the Mall tide grew. Yet, there was always the shadow of the unknown. The Mall tide was an entity of immense power and unpredictability. The artifact and the Awakens messages provided guidance, but no simulation could replicate the reality of facing a force that had destroyed civilizations before. The uncertainty was daunting, but it was also motivating. Humanity understood that they were stepping into uncharted territory, where courage, ingenuity, and perseverance would determine survival. By the end of this phase of preparation, Earth had transformed. A once quiet, ordinary planet had become a hub of activity, innovation, and strategy. Humans had built fleets, developed weapons, trained personnel, and prepared for a threat that spanned the galaxy. The world was united in a way it had never been before. driven by the knowledge that they were guardians of not just their planet, but potentially of countless star systems. The stage was now set for the next chapter. Humanity had taken every precaution, mastered advanced technologies, and strengthened their society. The Maw tide was moving closer, and other civilizations were beginning to recognize the danger. But humans had the understanding and preparation that others lacked. They were no longer just responding to a signal. They were ready to act, to defend, and to take their place as protectors in a story that had been unfolding for 80,000 years. And as humanity looked to the stars, the realization was clear. The galaxy had been watching. The council had been questioning. And now it was time to demonstrate that humans were capable of standing against a threat that had once seemed unstoppable. Humanity had risen from a small, quiet planet to a civilization prepared to face the unknown, armed with knowledge, technology, and an unbreakable spirit. The universe was about to witness a species that had listened, learned, and acted, proving that even in the face of unimaginable danger, courage and determination could make all the difference. The moment had finally arrived. Humanity, after years of preparation, study, and innovation, was ready to face the cosmic threat that the Orin had warned about. The Maw tide, a force that had destroyed civilizations for millennia, was approaching. Energy fluctuations and gravitational distortions in distant systems confirmed its movement. The galaxy held its breath, and Earth was no longer a quiet observer. Humans had stepped forward, carrying with them the knowledge, technology, and courage needed to confront a danger that few could even comprehend. From orbit, the massive fleets constructed in secret now gathered, their hulls gleaming in the light of the sun. Ships of every size, equipped with energy shields, advanced propulsion systems, and defensive weapons, formed an organized formation that stretched across thousands of kilometers. The crews had trained for this moment for years, mastering maneuvers and coordination that were unprecedented in human history. Scientists monitored energy readings and gravitational waves, ready to relay information in real time to the commanders directing the operation. Despite the scale and complexity, a sense of calm determination filled the teams. Humans had faced fear, uncertainty, and doubt during the preparation, but now they had purpose. The artifact from the RN had guided them, teaching them strategies, revealing technologies, and providing insights into the Maw tide's behavior. Humanity understood that this battle would not just determine the survival of Earth, but potentially the survival of countless civilizations across the galaxy. The stakes were higher than ever, and yet humans were ready. The first encounter came unexpectedly. The Maw tide, an immense entity of energy and matter, appeared at the edge of a star system near Earth's mapped route. It moved with terrifying speed, consuming everything in its path. Its appearance was almost incomprehensible. Vast tendrils of energy twisted and pulsed, emitting waves that distorted space itself. The sight was awe-inspiring and terrifying, a reminder of the power that had obliterated civilizations before. But humanity did not hesitate. They had studied, prepared, and now they acted. Commanders coordinated the fleet with precision. Ships moved in formation, creating energy barriers and defensive shields around vulnerable points. Humans used technologies adapted from the Orin's designs, manipulating energy flows to counter the Maw tide's destructive waves. Unmanned drones scouted ahead, transmitting critical information about the Devourer's movements. Scientists on board continuously calculated trajectories, predicting the creature's next actions and adjusting strategies in real time. Despite the immense threat, the humans displayed creativity and adaptability. The Orin's teachings emphasized observation, patience, and the use of intelligence to overcome raw power. Humans observed the Maw tide, looking for patterns and weaknesses. They noticed subtle changes in its movement, moments when its energy pulses fluctuated, and points where it was temporarily vulnerable. Using these observations, humans launched precise countermeasures, directing energy attacks and creating shields that could withstand the Devourer's immense power. Communication across the fleet was constant. Signals were transmitted instantly, ensuring that every ship acted in harmony. Humans had trained for years to operate in such conditions, and now every maneuver, every decision, and every calculation mattered. The tension was intense, but the crew members trusted their training, their technology, and each other. Humanity's greatest strength in this moment was not just the ships or weapons. They were united, coordinated, and focused on a single goal: survival. The battle was not without casualties. Some ships were damaged, and some systems failed under the Maw Tide's immense force. Yet humans adapted quickly, rerouting power, repairing shields, and using the artifact's instructions to optimize their defense. The Maw Tide was powerful, but it was not invincible. Humanity had prepared for this moment with patience, intelligence, and relentless determination. Every action taken by the fleet weakened the Devourer, slowed its advance, and allowed humans to protect critical systems. As the encounter continued, humanity began to understand the true nature of the Maw Tide. It was not simply a mindless force. It reacted to attacks, adapted to strategies, and tested defenses. Yet humans remained one step ahead. The artifact had revealed ways to anticipate its movements, and humans combined this ancient guidance with their own ingenuity. They devised new maneuvers, adjusted energy flows, and launched precise countermeasures that disrupted the Devourer's momentum. Hours turned into days. The battle stretched across multiple star systems, with humans coordinating fleets over vast distances. They relied on both technology and intuition, observing patterns, making predictions, and adjusting in real time. The galaxy watched in awe. Species that had doubted humanity's abilities now realized that humans were capable of facing a threat that had terrified civilizations for millennia. The preparation, training, and unity of Earth's inhabitants were paying off. Through persistence, intelligence, and courage, humans began to gain the upper hand. The Maw Tide, once unstoppable, started to falter. Energy pulses weakened, movements slowed, and vulnerabilities became more apparent. Humans exploited these weaknesses, striking precisely where the Devourer was most exposed. Each success boosted morale, strengthened coordination, and demonstrated that even the most formidable threats could be overcome through preparation, observation, and unity. Meanwhile, humans did not act recklessly. Every attack, every defensive maneuver was calculated to conserve resources, protect ships, and maintain the integrity of the fleet. The Oran's wisdom emphasized balance. Strength alone could not defeat such a force. Observation, strategy, and careful action were key. Humans followed this guidance meticulously, ensuring that each move was deliberate, measured, and effective. As the final confrontation approached, humans combined their knowledge, technology, and courage in a coordinated effort unlike anything seen before. Energy shields were reinforced, propulsion systems maximized, and weapons calibrated with precision. Every crew member understood their role in the stakes. Humanity had faced fear, doubt, and uncertainty, but now they were confident in their ability to protect not just themselves, but the galaxy. In the climactic moments, the Maw Tide's energy pulses became erratic. Humans recognized the signs and launched a synchronized, all-out effort. Energy flows were directed with perfect timing, shields optimized, and attacks targeted at the Devourer's most vulnerable points. The artifact's guidance proved invaluable, showing humans where to strike, how to defend, and how to anticipate the Maw Tide's adaptations. Finally, after hours of relentless effort, the Maw Tide began to collapse. Its energy pulses weakened, its movements slowed, and it fragmented into harmless streams of matter and energy. Humans had faced the impossible and prevailed. The fleets had suffered losses, but the majority of the ships remained intact, and the threat had been neutralized. Humanity had not only survived, it had demonstrated intelligence, unity, and courage on a scale the galaxy had never seen before. As the fleets regrouped and returned to Earth, the sense of accomplishment was overwhelming. Humans had faced a force that had destroyed civilizations for tens of thousands of years and emerged victorious. The artifact had guided them, the Oran's wisdom had provided strategy, and human ingenuity had adapted ancient knowledge into practical solutions. Earth had proven itself not only capable of surviving, but capable of leading, protecting, and shaping the future of the galaxy. The Council, which had observed every step, acknowledged humanity's achievement. Species that had doubted humans now saw them as equals, capable of facing threats that even advanced civilizations had feared. Diplomacy shifted from suspicion to respect. Humans had earned their place in the galaxy, not through power alone, but through intelligence, unity, courage, and perseverance. For humanity, the victory was transformative. The artifact and the signal had changed not just technology, strategy, or understanding. They had changed the way humans saw themselves. No longer were they a small, insignificant species. They had become protectors, innovators, and leaders, prepared to face the unknown challenges of the universe. The legacy of the Arin had been fulfilled, and humanity had risen to its destiny. In the aftermath, Earth became a center of knowledge, innovation, and coordination. Humans continued to explore the galaxy, following the maps and instructions left by the Orin. The fleets remained ready. Scientists continued to study advanced technologies, and the population embraced a shared purpose that transcended borders and politics. Humanity had learned that survival required unity, intelligence, and courage, and they had proven they possessed all three. The story of humanity's response to the signal and the defeat of the Maw Tide would be remembered for generations. It was not just a tale of survival. It was a story of growth, responsibility, and the fulfillment of a destiny that had been waiting 80,000 years. Humans had listened, learned, and acted, transforming themselves from observers of the stars into active participants in the fate of the galaxy. And as Earth looked up at the night sky, no longer was it just a distant light shining in darkness. It was the home of a species that had risen to meet a challenge no one else could face, a species that had earned its place among the stars, and a species ready for whatever mysteries and threats the universe may.